Okie dokie. Let's move on to the next chapter, which is developing the attack. So, obviously, we have been talking about sensing the moment, fighting for the initiative, or like keeping the momentum up, right? And now let's say we have all of these, or once again you feel like there is something in the air, and there are more pieces on that certain size where you want to attack. So you just increase the pressure, and so that's what this topic is all about. The ratio, right? The assault ratio, attackers versus defenders. But of course, now we're trying to focus on developing the attack. Okay, so putting pressure on the opponent, and because the position is already good, or already there are already signs that allow us to attack. So that's what we're gonna do, and that's what we're gonna talk about. And the first game is from none less, or from none other than Mikhail Tal, who was one of the greatest attackers of all time, obviously. All right, so let's check out this game. I'm gonna show you the whole game, but of course we're not gonna talk about the openings. This is a sideline for white. Obviously, it's not the most feared line. Queen takes d4, knight takes d4 is obviously the main line. It's a decent line. They play it still nowadays. There are some nuances in this, and if you're not the biggest fan, let's say, of like the main lines, but you still wanna play e4, and you still wanna have open positions, then this might just be the line for you. So knight c6, bishop b5. This is a main move, knight c6, natural move, trying to win a tempo. The other move that is fairly popular is a6, just to prepare knight c6, and a6 doesn't allow bishop b5. That's a decent move, but knight c6, this is all theory. Bishop b5, bishop d7, takes, knight c3, knight f6, bishop g5, normal developing moves, e6, and of course Tal castles long, but we're still following theory. Bishop b7, rook e1, bringing every single piece into the game. Very natural once again. Castle, queen d2. The reason for queen d2 is that white wants to improve the knight from f3 and wants to put it on d4 and d4 square. That makes a lot of sense. Queen a5, knight d4, rook c8, king b1. This is a prophylactic move. This is something that happens in most Sicilians. It's just a smart thing to do, and it has many purposes, but one of them is to just protect. To protect this pawn here with king a2, and it's important because if black does this very typical exchange sacrifice here on c3, so something like rook c3, the pawn will be protected. First, that's like one idea. And sometimes I just want to get out of this c1 h6 diagonal. If I can move my pieces out of this diagonal, it can be beneficial. So king b1 is a smart move overall. King h8. Okay, that was a weird move. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure what was his thought process here. Maybe something like knight g8, maybe. F4, h6. And now, of course, Tal, playing as white, keeps attention on the king side. and then he uses a well-known motif, um, and which is h4. Okay, so this is a very classical way of sacrificing the bishop here and still keeping the active attacker on the board. It's a very smart way to increase the pressure without sacrificing really, because most of the time you can't really take on g5 because you're gonna get checkmated on the h file. And since black played king h8, it looks even more dangerous to take on g5. I've had many games with white and with black, playing this move h4, and I had success with actually both colors, but I do realize even if I played this type of position with black, I always know that danger is there, and I have to be really careful in these type of positions. So black decided to actually take on g5, but this will definitely lead to disaster for black. So white, probably queen c5 was a move to make. That would have been a smart thing to do, and to create a counterplay with b5, b4, a5, and just start attacking white's king side, which is now the queen side. But this is something that he should be doing. That was a lot better. But so he should have kept his calm. He shouldn't have sacrificed, or shouldn't have accepted the sacrifice on g5. But that's what happened. So pawn takes. Obviously, I take it back with the h pawn because I want to open up this file here, the h file. Okay, so this is actually a very nice motive, and I highly recommend you to try this one, or at least experience with a move like h4 when your opponent has castle to the king side and then wants to kick your bishop away. I just to first just for fun and just to experience these kind of positions, and you get a sense and a grasp of like, okay, how to develop the attack and just to grab the initiative this way. So white, as I said, took on g5. Now black took on e4. So black's idea is to trade off queens, which is a smart thing to do in a position like this. I mean, it's not guaranteed that he's not getting checkmated after a queen trade, but obviously it's something that black would be happy to see. So white played a very very smart move and played queen d3, not trading queens. Once again, trading, right? We talked about this, and then I'm gonna talk about it still. There are certain positions and reasons when and why we trade pieces, and of course there are principles for trading, many principles, but this is definitely not this trade wouldn't really support any principles here. So obviously the queen heads to the h file. So I guess it is possible that black was blinded by the idea of knight takes c3 and giving a check and completely destroying the white's king side, but he missed a relatively easy answer. Okay, so in the game, actually black decided to take on g5. This lost fairly quickly. So knight cc offered more resistance So b takes c3, and now bishop g5, you know, getting rid of this this pawn, and of course just want to play bishop h6. So this rook h1 is actually not a checkmate because of bishop h6 just blocking the h file. So so instead of rook h1, I can take here on g5. Now king g8 is the only move. Why? Because if you take here, I just give a check, right? I just give a check, and that's pretty much game. So king g8 had to happen, or would have happened definitely. Rook h1, rook e8, and now queen h3. So the attack is really coming along. White is probably in a big lead here. King f8, but black is defending, right? Black is trying to do his best here, but of course the checkmate is probably inevitable. There are, you know, the lines are still not easy to find, and white has to be precise and accurate here. But probably the most accurate is to play rook d1 with the idea of sometimes, you know, knight f5 and just controlling the e file, and after that, you know, the checkmate is winning. So with the idea of knight f5, knight d1 is a very strong move. So for example, if you play something like queen takes g5, I can easily play knight f5, and the game is over very soon, because you can take because of checkmate, and if you take with the queen, it is still a checkmate of this, and this. Okay, so beautiful lines. Maybe black saw it. I'm not sure. I mean, obviously black was a very strong player, an American grandmaster, but you know, but he misplayed it. He definitely misplayed it in the beginning when he took on g5, and he thought that, I'm pretty sure he thought that knight e4 was the big move, and he wasn't even considering this queen d3 move because of, you know, knight c3, and it should just be good for black. But it, you know, you don't ever stop calculating in a position like this, right? There is a check, I can take it back. There are many active moves for both sides, so I don't think it was a smart thing to do by black, but it's not that easy to see. So bishop g5, now knight e4, and bishop e4. So if black goes back to h6, trying to block this whole h file, then there are once again many wins here. So there's this forcing line, and I'm always a big fan, and you should be too, or you should always look for these forcing lines. Knight f6 is a move. Pawn takes, and now rook h1, because otherwise it was a checkmate here on h7, right? I'm just actually threatening you with queen h7. So pawn takes, rook h1, king g7, and now of course the sacrifice is supernatural, because if you take, I give a check on h1, so you can't really do anything about that, because otherwise, you know, if you go back, I just give a checkmate, so black has to play queen h5 here, but I just take. Yes, so material wise, it's not actually over, right? Two rooks can be better than a queen, especially if they can work together. So material wise, black seems to be okay, but the king is way too weak, way too open, and no protection whatsoever. So white is winning here, probably with a checkmate. So I give a check here, you go back to g6, I give another check, and then it's just pretty much game over. If you take, I'm just the king is just too weak. I think it's clear and obvious what's gonna happen next. So beautiful, really really nice. And so black decided to take on e4, getting rid of another attacker, but white has enough attackers because he took it with the rook, and now bishop h6. Okay, bishop h6. And since we're talking about developing the attack, right, now every single piece pretty much, is attacking the king here on h8. This move king h8 was kind of nonsense as well. Like it was a weird move for sure. But so even though pretty much every single piece is in the attack, white wants to keep the momentum up, right? We talked about this, and then wants to develop the attack even further. So he brings another piece into the game, and don't forget about these little guys. Okay, don't forget about these little guys. They aren't worth that much, but they can do a lot of damage. So g4, very very strong move. This basically forces black to compromise his kingside further. Okay, so f5, it's pretty much the only move. Otherwise, g5 was obviously the threat here. So f5, rook takes e6, bishop takes f4. So if you take on g4, I can play rook h6, of course, threatening with another sack exchange, and that it's, as you can imagine, white wins here pretty fast and convincingly. So black decided to take on f4, but it doesn't really make that much of a difference because of knight f5. So, and actually, it was interesting because black gave up here. I mean, it wasn't really that surprising at all. White is winning here for sure. All right, beautiful game. Nice, very nice way of developing the attack, move by move, plan by plan. Very very nice. So let me show you another game, which is by Sokolov Ivan, who's once again a very strong attacker. He is from the Netherlands, and his opponent, another Dutchman, Smeets. So two strong players, 2,600 players. Let's check out what's going on in this game. So d4, d5, c4, c6, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3. So the Slav variation, e6, especially like this, and the g3 line. Okay, so many continuations here, but probably like two main lines here, right, that everybody is familiar with. Right? The one is bishop g5, which can lead to the Botvinnik line, which is a very 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 long theoretical line. It's absolutely ridiculous to know, but of course there are other lines here, the Moscow line. So many lines here. The other line could be for white is to play e3, which is the Marani. There's a different style of gameplay here, and of course there's this g3 move. This is more of a sideline, but it's still a very normal move. So pawn takes on c4. This is the main line here for black, because normally black doesn't take on c4, because white can just easily win it back. But because now white is developing to g2 and trying to achieve like a fianchetto setup, black can probably take and win the pawn and be a little greedy. That makes sense. All right. So bishop g2, knight d7, a4, and bishop b4. Castle, queen c2. So by the way, this a4 idea, I think it was clear why white played it. White wanted to stop this b5 move, right? He just didn't want to allow b5 to just further support the pawn on c4. Okay, queen e7, bishop f4, knight d5, attacking the bishop, moves away, want to keep the tension on the board, doesn't want to trade off pieces, of course, and the bishop can be a good asset or a good piece later on. F6 and went back to d2. So the reason why he played bishop g5, so you might think, oh, well, why do you play bishop g5? It loses a tempo. And it does lose a tempo, but I also forced this pawn move out of black, which is not something that you would normally do. And because the position is still fairly closed, I can get away with losing a tempo. So that's the so-called principle, right? In a closed position, losing a tempo might not be that big of a deal. Of course, in an open position now, that's totally different. And so here, white gets away with it, and at the same time, of course, it's still a loss of tempo for sure, but black can't really punish it, and creates a weakness on e6. So that's interesting. Black played c5, trying to, break through in the center. Knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, and pawn takes. Now it looks weird, right? These series of trades look like, it was just supporting black's case here. But it's not the case at all. It's not the case at all, because white is in the lead in terms of development. So this knight on d7 kind of stands silly. The bishop on c8 is not great either. It hasn't been developed just yet, and the rook in the corner is not that great. So I can create something here. That's probably your sign. So I want to develop the attack. I want to grab the initiative, and of course I'm still a pawn down, so I have to. So the principle is, whenever you're behind material or you're down in the position, try to come up with moves, plans that can create counterplay. So that's the number one thing that you got to ask yourself: where is the compensation? And here the compensation lies in the pieces that black's bad pieces, and of course the pawn on d5 is weird. Weird? It's not a good word. It's just bad. Like, it's just vulnerable. So knight h4, very nice move. Already trying to put as much pressure as possible. Queen e6, probably the only move. If you try to protect it with knight b6, after a5, things are getting a little messy for you. So queen e6, and now e4. Why e4? So I'm sorry for rushing a little bit here. You can stop the recording and or you can stop the video, sorry, and try to understand why e4. Come up with your own interpretation of like why e4 is a good move. Try to understand the reasoning behind it, or the principle behind it, and then you can continue. So e4 happened. So black was, and still is, technically a pawn up, but because of the pieces and because of the structure, white has good compensation, and he grabs it with e4. So because of because black is behind in development, as I said. So so black's problem here, as I said many times now, besides being underdeveloped, that the king on g8 actually is subject to a potential check on c4, for example, right? So so you can't really do anything about that, and so you can probably take on e4, but if you take on e4, now I guess I can just simply take on e4. Excuse me. Yeah, so I can definitely take on e4 because I just sneezed many times. So the position looks really good because there's actually a double attack here. I'm not just attacking this pawn, but I'm also attacking the queen with d5, and after that I can take the pawn on c4, and I regain or gain the material back, and I still have the initiative, right? So black decided to play queen b6 here, and now I can take on d5. Queen takes d4, but now rook d1, bringing every piece into the game. So if you play the same idea with bishop e4, now there's this tricky move with f5. Actually, it wasn't that easy, because if you take on f5 with a knight, winning a tempo makes a whole lot of sense. Now I can just simply go back to c7, guarding this square on e7, and then the next move I'm trying to develop with tempo, and bringing this bishop out of the game, bishop out to the game. So it wasn't that easy actually. So white decided to continue with rook d1, very nice move, winning a tempo. Queen c5. Once again, stop the video and think what could happen next. Okay, what would you play here as white? How would you continue with the attack? How would you develop the attack even further? So so white keeps up the momentum, and with a very, very nice move, and white plays d6. Really, really nice idea. What's the idea behind d6, you might ask? Very good question. I'm opening up this diagonal, and I'm also opening up this file here, and I'm creating a really strong square for my rook here. Okay, so this is really nice. This is really, really nice. Okay, so 95 trying to develop his pieces. Smeet's doing his best, but I feel like it's a little too late. Rook d5, queen b6, a5. White is not, giving any rest time for to black. So really, really nice play. Queen d8. Now white has a winning attack here, because it just. So this is the perfect example of, like, there is something in the air. Horrible pieces, horrible pieces, and except this guy, every single piece is beautiful in white's camp. Okay, so f4, once again, not resting, not giving a chance for black to finish development. Knight g4, and now rook h5, really nice attacking move. Once again, not resting whatsoever. g6, now bishop d5 check. See, at every single move there is a threat. So this is really nice. Bishop d5, king g7, and now rook takes h7, and the sacrifice wins because basically falls apart here on g6. King h8, but it looks like it's still not over. So once again, you can stop the video and come up with a continuation. How would you finish developing the attack and pretty much win the game? Excuse me. So do you have an idea here? What is the problem? Why can't white win immediately? because something like queen h5 seems like a very good idea. And if you go back, I can, I at least I have a perpetual check. So this line, I would always go for this line because I have a perpetual check. So if nothing else, I have this, safety route. But the reason is that there's one defender in the position, and I have to get rid of it. What's the one defender, you might ask? I think you know it, because otherwise this queen h6 move, right? Queen h6 would be a checkmate here, but the knight here is a pain in the butt. So still, all these pieces are horrible, except this guy. So I wanna kick this away, and white played h3. Very, very nice. h3, queen d6, and now queen h5. Went to g7, only move, and now I can just simply take here on g4. You might think that, oh, but I'm still down in material, but it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter all that much, because the king is way too weak, and you're still super behind in development. So it's pretty much game over instantly. So f5 was the last try by black. Queen g5, king h7, and now rook e1 finishes the game. What a nice way to finish, right? Bringing the last piece into the game. Really, really, really nice. All right, so two beautiful examples of developing the attack, sensing the moment, and it's just a good overall. Obviously, all these chapters, all these units or topics connect somehow, right? You can't really talk about developing the attack without sensing the moment, without keeping up the momentum, without fighting for the initiative. But this is how we learn, right? We look at it from different perspective, from different angles, and then we have like a complete picture of like, oh, okay, this is how I attack, and this is how I mostly grab the initiative and then continue on with that initiative. So let me just talk a little bit about the tips here as usual. Okay, so start your action on the side of the board where you are stronger. Okay, makes a lot of sense. If you have like many pieces on the king side, why would you play on the queen side where probably your opponent is stronger? And that's a common mistake, actually. I've seen that many times, actually. When your opponent is behind in development, try to open up the position with a pawn break. Logical, once again. Last game, a very nice example of it. Right? You just want to open it up, because if your opponent is not prepared, then I can probably get away with opening the position up. If your opponent's pieces are passive, you have to act energetically, otherwise you will lose the momentum. Sure, but it's always like this, right? Once you keep the momentum, this is why I said we approach it from different angles and from different topics or different games, but overall it's the same thing. Keep the momentum up, play energetically. With of course. This is for classical games, but sometimes in rapid too. When time pressure approaching, or with time pressure approaching, if you are the attacker, try to keep as much tension in the position as possible. Sure, because without actually having time to think about your moves, you're not going to be able to find the most precise defenses. Of course, you can find more games in the PGN. Good luck going through those, and you will learn a lot from it. And yeah, so that's it for developing the attack. Let's move on to the next chapter.